Now recording. So, hello everybody. How is everybody doing today? Good. I see a few familiar faces. Yeah. If I have never seen you before, I hope that we have a truly excellent semester together. If I have seen you before, then you know exactly what you're in for. So buckle up. So my name, such as it is Dr. Nicholas Moore. Not that kind of doctor. And this is server-side programming. Let's see here. Okay, so about 25% of the class missing, which, you know, that's how it goes, I guess. That's a very nice screen, too. Okay, let's see if we can play with the lights a little bit. How's that? That's better? Is that best? Or is that, what do you guys like? You like 2? Or do you like 3? 3? Okay. It's actually got like a pretty decent amount of natural light this room because of the big window across the hall. Yeah. Anyway, so server-side programming. Anybody already know something about servers? Completely fresh to everybody in the room? No? Yes? Maybe? We'll see. So, yeah. So let's take a look at the information on Canvas. Unfortunately, we kind of got bludgeoned over the head by the schedule last week. This is our first class, unfortunately, so in some sense we might be a little tiny bit behind. But that's okay. I've recovered a class from being worse behind than this. And they did fine, so we have nothing to worry about. Oh man. It's gonna be one of these where I have to like rest the keyboard tray on my belt. It's terrible. But the worst thing is, like, if you complain about these, they replace them with worse ones that don't even come up this far. So, you know. Okay, so, quick trivia. I will give 5 meaningless points to anybody who can tell me what movie this scene is from. Any movie buffs? Yeah? 2001: A Space Odyssey. Anybody hear of HAL 9000? The evil computer that murders people? One of the original evil computers that murders people? No?
Yes, now the evil computers take people's jobs.
Yes. Yeah, you don't have to outright murder people these days. But, yeah, no, okay, so your homework for this evening is to go get a copy of 2001: A Space Odyssey and watch it right through to the end. No skipping out halfway through, you know. It takes a bit of time to become a fully developed thought. You have to be patient with it, as you do most movies from that era. But it is a classic. Anyway. But that's okay. My Canvas shells are often inside jokes that get lost on everybody but me. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. So, I'm teaching 3 sections of this. Okay, Okay, the one thing about that room is that, like, that's quite harsh. Don't stand in the projector. Yeah. I'm teaching 3 sections of this course this semester. I've cross-listed the courses for no one's convenience but my own. So there will be information for all sections appearing. If like I announce I'm sick and we don't have class that day, you don't have to come to the class you're not in. So this is section 9. Let's talk about course policies. I'm assuming, since you guys are in the 3rd semester, you've been around the block at least a couple of times. So if anybody has any particular questions about anything or wants me to elaborate on anything, please just feel free to stop me at any time. Just put your hand up and I will answer your question. But otherwise, I'm just going to assume you guys already know something about what it's like to be at college. So, you'll notice the prepared by here indicates that this is a Steve Adams course, so you should prepare yourselves appropriately. So, let's talk about the grading breakdown. Late, take your seats. Where is it here? There it is. Can everybody see this in the back? Is that a bit better? Okay. So, in this course, we will be having 4 assignments, each worth 10% of your final grade. We will be having a midterm exam worth 30% of your final grade, and we will be having a final examination also worth 30% of your final grade. So the midterm and the final exam are equally weighted in this class. So study for both of them, please. In terms of special course policies, this is a course where you must pass the proctored component in order to pass the class. This means that you must pass the test and the final in combination, and that combination being the average of those 2 marks, in order to pass the class. So, before I get a million emails about it, it is not the case that you must pass both the midterm and the final. You must pass on average between the 2, right? So, for example, if you got, a 40% on the midterm and you said to yourself, man, I'm going to fail this course unless I pull my socks up and get to studying, and then you do, and then you get 80% on the final, then in combination between those 2, how much of a percentage do you get? Is that above 50? So then, even though you failed the midterm, you still have the potential to pass the class. Assuming you didn't skip every assignment as well. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Everybody understand the course policy?
Yes.
Good. Wonderful. Further, there are 10 late days for assignments in this class. There are 10 late days, maximum 3 late days on any particular assignment, and there are only 4 assignments. So, doing some quick maths, basically it would be an equivalent course policy if I only gave you 2 late days and then moved all of the assignments back by 2 days. But as it stands, people like spending money, even if it's meaningless, so we will keep the policy the way it is. You get 10 late days, max 3 on any assignment, and yeah. So, you know, you can use 2 on 2 of them and 3 on the other 2. Make sense? Any questions? All right. Good. So, I suppose we should talk a little bit about like what on earth this course even is. So, this is server-side programming. This is not client-side programming. So, you are not expected to write any client-side code in this class except that which is necessary for PHP to generate web pages. In general, the knowledge that you need to write PHP, basically, hopefully you did reasonably well in HTML and CSS. We won't actually use CSS, but you should know how HTML works. Hopefully by 3rd semester you know how HTML works. But the one thing you won't need is any JavaScript whatsoever. Yeah, people usually like that. The reason for that is that this course actually does not have client-side as a prerequisite. So it's if you, for example, didn't do so well on JavaScript and you didn't pass, that doesn't actually prevent you from registering in this course and taking it. So I actually can't assume that you folks know any JavaScript at all. So that being said, this is web development. Like, you do need JavaScript for stuff. So on assignments where you need JavaScript, that JavaScript will be provided by me to you. So, make sense? We are going to laser focus on the server in this class. The server is our entire concern. We don't care about anything else, just the server. Sounds good? Excellent. So, one must ask oneself, what even is a server? Anybody have any idea? What does a server do? What's it for? That's mostly sound equipment, actually. Looks like a server. They're like horizontal and they got the blinking lights, so that's the boxes look a lot like servers. Yes?
I think it like makes connections from one point to another.
That would be network infrastructure, so those would be routers. That is the concern of the networking stream. We don't care about that. We are software people. But you are on the right track. Yes?
The host for things like HTTP protocols?
Sort of. Anybody else? Yes?
Provides like a service to another computer or user?
Also true. Anybody else?
Send and receive information.
Send and receive information? Yes. Yep. Although that's a very general description. Yes?
It like sends information to other computers on the network.
Yes. That network sometimes being the internet itself. Did you have something? No? Someone else said something? So, in the context of this class, a server is a device which services HTTP packets. Anytime in this class when I say HTTP, I want you to mentally find and replace HTTPS. So, the client makes a request. It fires an HTTP packet off into the network infrastructure. We don't care how that part works. Eventually, that packet bounces around the internet through routers and other servers and all of those things. Eventually, it arrives at our server. The server receives the packet, calls up the requested resource, does some processing, that those 3 words encapsulating most of what we're going to learn in this class, does some processing. Then it takes the requested resource, sends it back out through the network infrastructure to the client as a response packet. So, this is a very, very, very important concept. In client-server architecture, the server has no ability to initiate communication. Is that door open?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me close it. Servers have no ability to initiate communication, right? So this means if you are running your online banking or some other, you're logged into something, right? The server does not have the ability to reach out with its claw through the internet, grab your computer and like log you out or something, or grab data off of your computer. It's not possible. The only data that the server receives is that which the client sends voluntarily, right? So, what happens when a server logs you out? What happens is, it just expires your session on its own side. If you'll notice, when you're working in an expired session, you don't actually know that until you try to request data or like refresh the page. Then it tells you that the session is expired, right? Like the counter to that is like I think I've seen this on like government websites and that type of thing. Like the server will send a timeout to the client, and the client will like display like you have 30 seconds or you have 30 seconds left in your session, do something, that type of thing. The server has sent the timeout to the client, but the client is the thing doing the counting, right? It's not like the server is sending a new packet every second to update that timer. It's just, well, first of all, that would be way too much network traffic. Imagine doing that for everybody logged in, right? And secondly, again, the server can only respond to a request. That's the only thing that a server can do, is respond to a request. So far so good? Awesome. So, we are going to be examining the server's half of that interaction. When you think about web applications, you shouldn't think about, the two halves, client and server, as being separate things. A web application is the combination of the client side with the server side, right? Though they're connected together in an intimate embrace that lasts through the centuries. So, we're going to be studying PHP in this class. Does anybody know what PHP stands for?
PHP, Hypertext Preprocessor.
Very good. So the first P in PHP stands for PHP. It is therefore a recursive acronym. So you should be, don't worry. We're not actually probably going to use any recursion in this class, though you will in data structures, I'm sure. In terms of like the actual programming content here, it's going to feel more like Python than anything else. It's like if you took the feel of Python and you added the syntax, like syntactically it's kind of Java-like, then you're kind of approaching the feel, the mouth feel of PHP, if that makes sense. Yes, we're going to be covering a lot of different topics in this class. Believe it or not, this class actually contains your first introduction to file input-output in this program. So we're going to learn how to interact with files. We are going to do some light databasing. How many people in the database course right now? How many people not in the databasing course right now? Some people didn't answer yes to either of those questions, so they're not computer scientists just yet, as that was a Boolean response. I guess that could have raised an exception, right? So if you're not in the databasing class, don't worry. The database requests which we are going to expect from you in this class are nothing to write home about. Very basic operations. I will teach you how to perform these operations in class. If you are in the databasing class, then you can check Facebook while you're doing that. I don't know. Young people aren't really on Facebook anymore, are they? It's everybody's grandmother, right? You can check whatever the new social media that all the kids are on these days is. So, not that you should be doing that now, as this is important stuff. We will also be talking about sessions and cookies. We will also be talking quite a bit about security. So, all of you are doing a diploma in software development. So, there should be some advantage to having a diploma over just being a bedroom programmer. There should be some benefit to formal education. And one of those is, I'm going to teach you how to write server software that is less susceptible to hacking. That's going to be a major theme in this class, actually. PHP, actually programming, not just PHP, like server programming in general, it's one of those sorts of things where you can know just enough to be really dangerous to yourself. There are many things that leave a server vulnerable to an attacker, which are not necessarily obvious. Although I hope it's obvious once I show you how the attacks work. But it's kind of sometimes out of the way stuff, and basically all of you should try to step back somewhat from your reliance on outside sources for knowledge and try to step into the material which has been published in this shell, right? It doesn't super matter where you learn about JavaScript, but when it comes to PHP, you should learn from trustworthy sources, right? And I'm not saying because someone's going to put some kind of injection attack into a tutorial or anything like that. They'll just give you incomplete information. They won't show you the whole way. They won't show you current best practice, right? That's the other thing, is when you're looking up these internet tutorials, a lot of them can be quite old, right? This course is maintained by the college with latest practices in security. Therefore, the information in here is the best currently on the market for writing server software and not getting hacked. As such, I will be deducting marks from people for writing software that I can break in a hacking sense, right? Because if there's no penalty to writing, to writing code that I can easily break, then nobody will bother, right? Because it does take more effort to write software that's more impervious to attack. But it also means that the course has a bunch of really fun demos in it, where it's like here's some software, Now let me show you how to hack it, you know? Like I'm actually gonna be doing hacking demonstrations in class. Because that's the sort of thing that you should be able to do too, right? Now I'm not saying, you know, go become criminals. Don't become criminals, okay? Yeah. But if you, I kind of take the approach that if you don't know how the attacks work, how are you supposed to defend against them, right? Like, I'm not expecting you to just memorize what I'm telling you and just memorize, okay, I should do this security practice, I should do that security practice. The purpose of school is so that you understand how things work, and you can't really understand how things work unless we do a couple of like in-class hacking demonstrations. So, question? Nope. Awesome. So, any questions from the audience about that? Cool. This is actually one of my favorite courses to teach. So, I hope we have fun. I hope that we have fun together. So, I will say, once again, I should address the elephant in every room in programming and life in general these days, which is, of course, the accursed chatbot. The most cursed of all the chatbots. So, I'm not sure what the reliance on ChatGPT has become for any particular student in this class. I advise an even greater level of caution with it than you would normally exercise. Let me tell you a story. So last year I taught this course, and I had a student who fared reasonably poorly on the final exam. In particular, there is like the big, chunky, meaty programming question on the final exam, which you all know is coming, right? Beware, it's coming for you. It's like the jaws of programming problems. No, it's not too bad. If you study, it's not too bad. So this particular student had a meeting with me in an ultimately futile attempt to try to increase his grade because I thought I had marked him kind of generously, actually, considering what he gave me. But you know, other opinions were available. So after unsuccessfully attempting to explain to me how his solution was actually correct when it wasn't, the student asked permission to enter the problem into the accursed chatbot, which, on one hand, I was incensed. The unmitigated gall of the student to use ChatGPT as the only repository for truth over my own word as a seasoned professional. But I was also curious. I was curious to see what the thing would come up with. So I permitted this student to fact check me with ChatGPT. And the results were interesting. If a student had written that what it gave out, if they had written that down on their exam paper, they would certainly have failed that question. Because the solution that the chatbot gave was very vulnerable to security problems. Like, it was, like, to describe it as Swiss cheese doesn't even do it justice. It's like, it'd be like Swiss cheese except you replace the hole with the cheese. It was like, you know, it was like negative universe Swiss cheese, which is mostly whole. That was like, that's the solution that the chatbot gave to this problem, right? And, you know, I told him right there, you know, this solution that this thing produced, I wouldn't pass this. And like, I think I kind of destroyed his brain a little bit because like he was so used to thinking of everything that the chatbot produces as being gospel truth, and it's like it lies. It doesn't. It makes stuff up and it lies. All right. It does not give you the truth. In fact, there's a little thing at the bottom under the chat pane that says this is not necessarily the truth, because it has to be there for legal reasons, I suppose. That being said, lots of people seem to think that it's truthy enough, which, might be fine if, like, you're writing some kind of, BS arts essay or whatever. But here, where things actually have consequences, okay, put it another way. Who's responsible for the code that you like, let's say you're working for a company, right? Let's say you write this code with heavy assistance from the chatbot, and then you submit it as work to your employer, it gets published, your employer gets hacked, negative consequences. Possibly, like, who's losing their job? Right, is ChatGPT losing its job?
No.
Nope, it's you. Because you are responsible for every line of code you submit, right down to the semicolons, right? So if you are putting your name on things that you don't understand, sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. Okay? So just don't do it. So you might be saying to yourself, boy, this guy really doesn't seem to like ChatGPT. So I will very briefly expound for you what I think good and legitimate uses of the cursed chatbot are. Essentially anything that you would have put into a Google search like 5 years ago, or however long that thing's been around, right? If you ask specific questions that are limited in scope, how do I do X in PHP, right? If you phrase the question yourself particularly, the responses that it will provide are usually, you're late, come on. The responses that it will get are usually reasonably reliable and succinct, and if you plug the code in, it should work much of the time. Not always, but much of the time. And it's faster than Googling and picking through like tutorial websites. This is good. This is good. This is goodness. Always, 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 when you're doing even that much, make sure that the code that you're using does not introduce security vulnerabilities. Okay? You should know by taking the class where a vulnerability gets introduced. You, in fact, should be as able to critique ChatGPT as I am by the end of this, right? You should look at everything it produces and gives to you with a critical eye, all right? As you should with anything said by any human being, including myself. So, any questions? In summary, academic dishonesty, don't cheat. Anybody planning on cheating this semester? Ooh.
You just won't notice.
Well, we'll see. I am one of those types of profs that looks for it and prosecutes it where I find it. So, yes, don't cheat, because I'll catch you, and you won't be happy when I catch you. Yeah, we'll see. This is the little game that we play, the professor and the student, So, yeah, I find that, like, it's not usually as bad here as it is in Java, like, there are a lot of people who are kind of, you know how in Dark Souls it's like, when you're fighting a boss, you just kind of throw yourself at it, and you throw yourself at it, and you throw yourself at it, and eventually, either you break or the brick wall like breaks through gradual accumulating crack. Some people take that approach to Java, you know, by the time they get through Java, hopefully they will have learned not to cheat, and that cheaters never prosper. But you know, we'll see. We'll see. If you cheat, I will catch you. Rest assured. And I will not be pleased. And if I'm this grouchy when I'm pleased, imagine how grouchy I'll be when I'm not pleased. Oh, okay, one more thing before we go on. I run a video game development club for any interested parties. It's 2 to 5 on Fridays. Shoot me an email if you're interested in joining. We're just a bunch of cool people who like to make video games. There's my plug. I've plugged it. I've done my due diligence. So, any questions about anything before we maybe start heading in a more content-oriented direction? Trying to get the vibe of the class. Class vibe, let's see.
You said 2 to 5 in which room?
Oh, they actually haven't given us a room yet, but we're probably going to have an informal meeting in F170 on Friday. So, assuming it's not booked with something else. The scheduling around here is nightmarish at best. At worst, it's pandemonium, the outer realm from the Dungeons and Dragons universe. Look it up if you're interested. So, so, it's a very awkwardly placed pillar. That's the one not great thing about this room. So, let's talk a little bit about the technologies that we will need in this class going forward. You may have guessed this already by the mere title of the course, but we will be using CS Unix in this class. It is a server. We are learning to program servers. Hopefully this makes sense. So, everyone this week needs to try logging in with their CS Unix credentials, make sure they still work. If they don't, shoot me an email. I will reset your password, yada yada yada, same thing as before. You will need access to it to complete the assignments, so might as well get that out of the way. Everybody is familiar with CS Unix? Good. Wonderful. Anybody not familiar with it? Okay, good. Incidentally, has everybody done JavaScript? Hopefully? Good. Unfortunately, yeah. So how was JavaScript? Like, was it a good one or was it a bad one? Yeah, okay. Who was the prof? Interesting. He retired, actually. Yeah. Had a party and everything. So, course is intended to pick up where JavaScript left off. Does anybody recall where JavaScript left off?
Sending the, what's it called, sending the, like, you get it to display the thing from the PHP server.
Oh, you're
The Ajax.
there it is! There's the acronym. Yes, Ajax. So, yes,
It's been like 5 months.
yeah. So, can anybody tell me what an Ajax call, like, you said it's communicating with PHP on the server? Yes. So,
Send your request.
what Ajax does is it allows you to send an HTTP packet from JavaScript. It allows you to request a server resource. Now, the packets which are requested through Ajax are the same as the packets which are requested through the URL address bar or when you submit a form or anything like that. The server can't really tell the difference. It can't tell whether a request originates from the address bar, from a form submission, or from an Ajax call. That being said, you will write different types of PHP for each of those different situations. So, where in JavaScript you fired these packets off, here we will learn how to receive them, process them, throw them back. Right? That is the whole point of server-side programming. So, however, CS Unix is a live server. Anything you put up on the public folder of that server is actually publicly accessible to the internet in general. It's not even gated by the VPN or anything. So, is it a good idea to do your development on a live public server? No, certainly not. So, does anybody know what program we're going to use to emulate a server?
Visual Studio Code.
Nope.
CSU.
Nope. CS Unix is a server.
Private,
What?
private,
Private is a
private folders.
oh, the private folder of CS Unix? Well, you can, but it's we're going to use something else. Advanced.
Virtual machine? Virtual machine?
Nope, we're not. Well, no, it's not a virtual machine. But you're on the right track. So we are going to use a program called XAMPP. XAMPP is a program which emulates a server on your own machine. So, let's discuss how this actually works, and maybe dig a little bit into how packets work inside of your own computer. So, quick question. Where do HTTP packets come from? What creates them? What initiates a request? The user using, do your hands up? No, it's just, oh, well, in this class, if you're scratching your ear, you better have a question. I'm kidding, of course. What initiates a request? At least typically, yes. Say again? The user? Well, the user isn't a program. The user is usually a person. Although that's not always true. But anyway. Hey?
The machine.
The machine, too general.
Browser?
The browser, that's it. Yes. So, let us imagine our computer as a rectangle. Computer. Yeah. The browser, it doesn't have to be a browser. Anything can send a packet. Like you can send packets from Python and that type of thing, you know. but yeah, like you can make HTTP requests from within Python for server resources, and other languages too. But for typical development browsers, that is a program running on your computer. And I'm gonna attempt to draw the Chrome logo. That one's going the wrong way. That, something like that. Hopefully you can get that. But so the user is a person who is not part of the computer, at least not yet. Perhaps that will change if Musk has his way, but because the whole brain thing. Anyway, wow. Okay. Yeah, it's just just the general unresponsiveness to humor in this classroom. I tell jokes. It's okay to laugh at them, even if they're not funny. Sometimes the unfunny jokes are the funniest ones. So, every computer has a socket layer. What the sockets do is, so anybody here live in an apartment building? Yeah. In apartment buildings they have those walls of mailboxes, with the little ones, and you put your key in and you get your mail, and then you close it again. And then on the other side of that, it's just a big grid, and someone's on the other side stuffing all of the things with junk mail, That is a good metaphor for what the socket layer is doing on a computer. All right? So, out this way, you have network infrastructure that we don't care about. Right? It's not our job to study it. It's the job of the networking guys to study that, know that, be able to fix it when it goes wrong. All we care about is the stuff on this side. Right? So, you can imagine this socket layer as a series of cubby holes, all with an ID on it, a socket number, right? So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So, the way that the network is configured, some of these will be pre-allocated to outgoing messages, right? That is to say, this process, which sends things out through the network, it's waiting for some of these sockets to receive packets. The packets are put there by your applications, like the browser. So, for example, when you, if you want to request a web page, like www.thebestcutekittensintheworld.com, you generate a request packet. This request packet is then slotted into the corresponding cubbyhole for outgoing packets. Request. This packet is then picked up by the network infrastructure, gets fired out into the internet, bounces around, hits this router, that thing, this thing over here, ISPs, runs through, the NSA's databases, of course, all around, establishing privacy through encrypting the message beforehand, and handshakes, and TLS, and all that stuff we don't care about. Eventually, the packet arrives at the server. The server processes the request. These requests are usually a request for resources. This is, so at least traditionally, it's a request for a resource. As APIs have become more popular, things get a little bit different, but basically in this course we're going to be talking internet classic until like the last 2 or 3 weeks, and then we'll talk about how things get modified to handle APIs. Like, understand that like the classic stuff is how this stuff was designed. Everything after that modifies the old stuff. Like, just because you say, oh, you know, REST API, and you know an acronym, doesn't mean that it's like fundamentally different technology from what went before, right? So, the request comes in, server processes the information. Perhaps it retrieves a file, like hello.php. It executes it, produces a response packet, which it then fires off into the network infrastructure again. So this arrow becomes bidirectional. The network infrastructure places this response packet into another one of those cubby holes. It's a different cubby hole, right? Incoming and outgoing get different slots. The computer's internal packet routing system then says, oh, that's the response to this thing over here. I'm going to send that back to the application that generated the request. And response gets sent back to Chrome. Chrome loads your web page and then executes all of the scripts, and you know, if it needs more CSS, it sends out more packets. You know, all of that stuff that you've been learning so far. Make sense? Question?
What happens if you like lose like that knowledge? You send the whole thing to
Send what whole thing? Sorry.
You're requesting data, right, from the server. You're probably not sending the whole thing, but just probably sending chunks, right?
Oh, you mean the when the server responds?
When it sends the data back. Like you just said, like you request like a PDF, right?
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't send the whole PDF like all at once. So it would be like
This is kind of networking stuff that we don't have to worry about, but I'm pretty sure that HTTP packets have like, I think they have like a maximum size of like a theoretical maximum size of like hundreds of gigabytes or something. So I think you can actually ram everything into one packet, but ask me your question. But yeah, that's kind of networking stuff. We don't have to worry about that for this course. We can just be grateful that it works most of the time, at least. So let's see. We started at 10, so we're ending at noon. So we still got an hour to go. Good. So that's how things operate normally, right? Now, let's consider how things work when we are not trying to communicate with some server somewhere through the network infrastructure. Let's consider what happens when we are trying to communicate with XAMPP, which, if we recall, is emulating the function of a server. XAMPP is a software process. It is a program that you load and run on your computer, same as the browser.
Without to use the server.
We don't have to use the server. Yeah, that's the whole point of using XAMPP. XAMPP is allowed to reside on your local machine right there. So, instead of sending the request out through the network infrastructure, it's getting bounced off the socket layer into XAMPP. So it's not like it's communicating directly. That's not what it's doing, right? That's what it does if you load a PHP script as a file from the file system, is it's attempting to not have to go through the socket layer. But it sends its request, and then that request gets, instead of being bounced out that way, it gets bounced out this way and sent to XAMPP. XAMPP then processes that request in the same manner as the server.
The server for the exam.
Yeah, so if this is CS Unix, for example, if XAMPP has been configured with the same software versions that CS Unix is using, it's difficult to distinguish between the two in terms of the outputs it produces. So, XAMPP processes the packet, it runs PHP, produces the response packet, sends the response packet back into the socket layer, where again it gets bounced off and sent back to the initiator, the client. Does this make sense? Sort of? So, effectively, there are a couple of good effects about this. Number one, our packets are not crossing the red dotted line. Our information stays contained to our computer system, right? It's not going out on the network, it's not going anywhere, it is internal to the computer. This means there is no fear about working with sensitive data. You don't have to worry about that. Everything will be fine because it's not leaving your computer. That being said, if your computer's compromised, then, under normal circumstances, the packets don't cross this line. The other thing, from the perspective of XAMPP, sort of examining this guy, right? XAMPP doesn't, it's kind of a strange thing to say, but it's not really aware that it's not a real server, It's like if Pinocchio was not aware that he was a puppet, As far as XAMPP is concerned, all it's doing is servicing these sockets the same way this guy would be on his own dedicated hardware, right? So, important point. A server is software, not hardware. A computer being used as a server may have several servers on it. This will come into it particularly because we are not just going to be using HTTP servers in this class, we are also going to be using SQL servers. So, you can have XAMPP running running an Apache server. You can have XAMPP running like a MariaDB or MySQL, SQL database as well, and it's just a server. You can have multiple of these things, which is kind of the nice thing about virtualization. Same thing here, right? Within CS Unix, there's the web server, which handles web pages, but CS Unix also has an SQL server embedded inside of it, which we will again be playing with a bit later on in the course. Any questions? All right. You guys want to see a hello world then? I always like to get to the hello world in the first class. I think I've always had a good first class if that's the case. So, if you're working off your own laptop, then you probably won't be able to follow along right now because it requires you to download XAMPP and that sort of thing. Actually, since we're on the subject, for those of you who intend your own installation of this software on your own machine, please consult the Setting Up a Development Environment page in Canvas. Use XAMPP. So XAMPP is cross-platform compatible, that's why it's XAMPP. WAMP is a specific Windows version, which I suppose if you're using Windows it's fine, but I don't see why you wouldn't use the cross-compatible one, personally. You clicked on the video, didn't you? Yeah.
It was an accident. I thought it was a picture.
Yeah, no, it's horrible, right? What's even better about that is like, look at this. It's a video you have to scroll, plus it's got a bunch of text, like the text of it, underneath, which is also a scroll bar. It's like, ugh. So I have to say, I took over course writership of this course, actually not even technically yet. I haven't had time to fix that yet, so, but rest assured it's on my list. But anyway, the important part here is to note that you should be using version 7.2.24 of PHP. That is the version on CS Unix. If you do not install an XAMPP installation with that version of PHP, you may find yourself having strange problems. Now, the intended workflow with the assignments, you should develop them on XAMPP, then port them to CS Unix, and make sure they work before you submit the code. Alright? You test on your production server. You test on it, you test it, you test it, you test it, you test it. If the code doesn't work on CS Unix, it doesn't work. Alright? CS Unix is the one that's being used to determine this code works, this code doesn't work. So you must have the correct version of XAMPP installed on your computer, otherwise you might have some strange compatibility errors. This is behind the current version of PHP, and PHP is one of those languages where it actually matters. Question?
It says there that it supports an XAMPP or WAMP. Is there one that's better than the other, or is it just that
They're kind of functionally equivalent. It's your computer, so you can put whatever you want on it. XAMPP is cross-compatible to any platforms or any operating system, so that's the one I prefer just to simplify my life. Like, XAMPP does everything that WAMP does and more, so, you know.
makes sense?
Yep. So, good. So anyway, if you're on a lab computer, please log in to, well, first of all, log into the computer, but also open up Mohawk Apps, please, and log in. So, I'm going to assume that everybody is already familiar with the workflow for uploading things to CS Unix. You will, of course, want PuTTY, WinSCP for that. Here, XAMPP VS Code as an editor. So, I apologize, I cannot make the XAMPP control panel any larger than it is. Or at least if there's a setting for it, I haven't found it. This is your XAMPP control panel. Each of these 5 entries is a different type of server that you can run through XAMPP simultaneously. We are really only concerned with the top 2. The first one is Apache, and the second one is MySQL. We won't need MySQL until after the midterm. So, does anybody know what Apache is? Aside from being web server software.
Well, there is an artist named that.
Yes. There's also a tribe of indigenous North Americans with the same name, I believe. Just like Adobe is like a type of hut made with like roofing. I don't know. But Adobe is also derived from a similar source. But no. Like, what is Apache? Anybody? Yes.
Isn't it something that helps deploy your website onto the...
Yeah, but like, as a piece of software, what it is it is a Linux operating system. Like a full-blown Linux operating system. With a bash prompt and everything. When you log in through PuTTY, that's what you are accessing. You are accessing the bash prompt of the Linux distribution, which is running on CS Unix. So, any Linux people in the crowd? When you shake your hand like that, what do you mean? What's your Linux experience?
When I'm networking, I use it.
Yeah. Yeah. What's your Linux experience?
I'm getting it when I'm talking to like the videos on the next stuff. It's not I was kind of messed with it.
Yeah, well,
It's probably going to be
yeah. Anybody who's truly a Linux person does their own installation, not even dual booting. Ha! In case you're wondering, your poor humble professor is in the cult of Penguin. I actually am a full-time Linux user, not even dual booting. I just do everything in Linux. So, if you're interested in Linux, please, come shoot me a question, see me after class, etc. I am always happy to share Linux knowledge with people about stuff. And for me, any day where I download a Linux ISO for installation on anything is a good day. Because it is truth, rightness, and justice in a world of Microsoft. And the more Linux we can spread, the more happiness we spread throughout the universe. So, yes. What we have to do is we have to liberate the people from crummy operating systems. So much wasted time, so many stupid Windows dialog boxes that... Do you have any idea how much time is wasted on this planet by Windows user account control? Crazy stuff. But,
Not as much as
no, I don't, but it was more of a rhetorical point. But,
What about WSLs? Windows second level?
Nah. If Microsoft touched it, it's bad. Free and open source, man. Free and open source. Anything good about Microsoft or any Microsoft product, they either bought out a company to get it or they copied it from Unix. Literally. Okay, so you know how in Windows you've got backslashes to separate folders? Everybody else uses forward slashes. Do you know why Windows does it the other way? Worse, actually. So that was the convention in Unix, right? In MS-DOS, they made the slashes go the other way just to be different from Unix. That's the only reason. And they caused decades of program incompatibility because files, you couldn't do a file path from one to the other without changing the way the slashes went. Microsoft. As far as I'm concerned, it's like the word Microsoft might just as well read evil. The evil operating system. But anyway, written by the devil. But anyway, so Apache is a Linux server. If you don't know anything about Linux, you should learn some because you'll learn how the server works. You see what I mean? You see what I mean? This is exactly what I'm talking about. I'm going to click cancel here, and it will have no impact whatsoever on the functioning of this program. Every single person in this room is going to have to click cancel every time you start up a server using XAMPP on Windows. If we took all of those wasted seconds and we pooled them together across the entirety of humanity, we would already have a Mars colony. Yes?
What are your thoughts on Windows Copilot?
Yeah, it's like the combination of my two favorite things. Windows and the bloody AI. That's great. Love it. The words pointless marketing exercise appear in my brain. So, a couple of important points here. Yes?
How come your ports are 443 and 1080?
It kind of just picks ones it wants. You can modify it, but this will work, so there's no point. Yeah. Depending on depending on your own computers and your own configuration, it may end up being something different. It doesn't matter as long as you know what the port number is. So, our Apache server is running because it's green. We have port numbers. Yours might be slightly different, but if you're on a lab computer, you have a good chance of having 443 and 1080. 1080 is the one that we will probably want. This means that we now have a server running on localhost. Localhost is the name of the host that is local. But yes?
There's a live server on Visual Studio Code that emulates like its own web page. It's like an extension. It's literally called localhost.
Yeah, it'll be doing the same thing.
Oh,
There are
okay.
lots of different pieces of software that that can run something on localhost. In fact, fun fact: depending on some of the programs that you may have installed already, you may be blocked from starting up your Apache server if your computer is already running a web server on localhost. So if XAMPP is being blocked in that way, I recommend taking a look at the programs that you have installed and seeing which of them might be running a web server without your knowledge. You know, Windows again. But so localhost then. So remember from the little diagram, what is it that we use to communicate with XAMPP? Man?
We use
The user is a person.
The
Browser.
Browser, yes. Programs in user mode are not users. So, open up a tab in your favorite browser. Type localhost. On a lab computer, this won't work, but depending on your configuration on your own laptop, that might have worked. So, if this didn't work, that means we need to specify the port number. Fortunately, XAMPP gives you the port number. In our case, it's 1080. In order to specify a port number in a URL, you use a single colon, and then you write the port number. Colon 1080. We have the XAMPP dashboard page. If you have loaded this screen, then you have completed this, yes?
Why don't we use 443?
One's in going out, one's out coming, I think. Yeah. I don't know, I'm not a networking guy. So, if you see this dashboard, then you have successfully connected to XAMPP. It's like, okay, sure. Things seem to be working. Is there anybody it's not working for, by the way? Everybody got that far? Good. So, the next thing that we want to do is we want to replace this with our own software. Our own documents. So, some of you may be familiar. CS Unix. Where do you put your files if you want them to be viewable on CS Unix? Yes, you've got two folders. Public HTML and then a subfolder private, which is where you guys were putting your assignments, hopefully. Here in XAMPP, inside of the XAMPP installation directory, which by the way on Windows machines is on like the root level of the hard drive for some reason, there is a subfolder called htdocs, hypertext documents. That folder contains all of this. The easiest way to get there is from the XAMPP interface, click Explorer, htdocs. There we have it. And as you can see, we have dashboard, image, XAMPP, etc., etc., etc. This is all safe to delete. By deleting this, you get rid of the dashboard page and nothing else. So let's just obliterate it. There we go. Now, in VS Code, File, Open Folder, we are going to open the htdocs folder. It is located, this PC, Windows C drive, XAMPP, htdocs. There we go. Do I trust myself? I probably shouldn't, but I will. So, we are going to make our hello world. Create a new file, please. Let me blow this up. Also, high contrast. Is this readable from the back? Is it good? Awesome. New file. Hello.php. There we go. Go away. Go away. So, we now have a PHP file.
Excuse me, what is software
You can. What's this? Oh, this might be. Okay, yeah, you can just destroy everything in there and replace it with this file. You can also, if you don't want to destroy stuff, you can make a subfolder and then put it in there too.
How did you get your file onto the screen? I wanted to show more options to do new file.
Oh, yeah, don't go through Windows to do that because it'll give you like strangeness with respect to file extensions.
Just open it from Visual Studio.
Yeah, open the folder from Visual Studio and create the file. For those of you who are using Windows, despite everything, please, 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 please enable viewing file extensions. Because otherwise, if you name something, if you create text file and name it hello.php, it will put .txt on the end of it without telling you it's doing so, and the server doesn't know what to do with that, so it doesn't execute PHP when you do that. You have to create it with VS Code or enable viewing file extensions for Windows, or else you're sunk. You won't be able to get anything to run. That being said, this is also the format in which you have to submit things for the assignments. So, so it goes. Question?
Can you just do this again?
Yes.
I can open this.
Have you guys got VS Code open?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Very simple. Yes. There's a little button here, New File, or if you prefer, File, New File. Select File Type, PHP. Create New File, PHP. Hello.php. Create file. There you go. Sound good? All right. So, first rule of programming in PHP. All PHP scripts must start with the open PHP tag and end with the closing PHP tag. Is that big enough? I can make it a bit bigger. Is that big enough? I can make it bigger too. Better? One more? Good. Awesome. So, this starts a PHP block. This ends a PHP block. This starts the PHP interpreter. This pauses the PHP interpreter. Everything between these two is PHP code. We'll get to the rest later. So, can anybody tell me what the command is for outputting text in Python?
Echo.
Hmm?
Echo.
Now, somebody is not answering the question which I asked. I said, what do you do in Python? Print, yes. How about Java? Everyone at once.
Sounds.
System.out.println. How about in JavaScript?
Console.
Console.log. How about C#?
CW tab.
Yeah, there's a few different ways. I would have also accepted console.writeline. So, somebody already stole my thunder. But does anybody know what it is in PHP? No.
Echo.
I mean, technically, outside the tags, but inside the tags.
P.
Nope. It's echo. Echo, echo, echo. Just like Linux. That's right. Ooh, just like Linux. You even leave out the parentheses. Echo, hello, world. Just like that. So, you may be asking yourself, that's a bit of a strange one, right? That's a bit of an oddball. What on earth is meant by the term echo? Why not print? Why not print line? Why not print F? Why echo? Yes? Yes. Well, yeah, it does make sense in that respect, right? The server is echoing this information back to you, although an echo is supposed to be the same thing that it receives. So, you know, it's like, doesn't completely fit the description. But the reason is bash scripting. So, in Linux, right, the original Linux operating systems, before they even developed a GUI, all used shell interactions. Shell interactions meaning command line interface, right? The command line interface in Linux is an extremely powerful thing. Bash stands for the born again shell. So it's not shell, it's the new improved shell, the born again shell. And bash commands, some of these programs date back all like pre-1960s. They're that ancient. The likely reason that this is called echo and not print is because it has fewer characters that way. A lot, like that's the type of memory limitations that we were talking about back when some of this software was developed. So echo is what you use in a bash prompt if you just want to print information to the standard output stream, or any stream really if you redirect it. PHP likes to think of itself the same way as bash. And it carries with it many of the annoyances of bash, as we shall see without, not too shortly. So, yeah, so that's where echo comes from. PHP loves bash so much that you can actually execute shell commands in it just by enclosing them in backticks. So like backtick operator shell commands in PHP, that's a thing. Your script doesn't necessarily have the, proper authority to execute bash scripts, but, or to execute shell commands, but, you can do the same thing in other languages, like in Python it's shell exec, but, so it goes. But yeah, shall we run it? Some of you may have beaten me to the punch. So if you go back to your browser and load just localhost 1080, getting rid of the dashboard folder that we deleted, you'll see that we have hello.php as a file which was created just a couple of minutes ago. If we click on it to load the resource, we get hello world. Ta-da! Make sense?
I'm not getting
Problems? Oh, well, you'll need a colon there. And you'll also need to look up your port number to see if that's the correct port. Yeah, and it's,
Just me and you might be just me.
yeah, you're on port.
Yes. If you look over here, these
At West End.
so we got 80 and 4.
That's weird. We're gonna have to look at that after class.
What are your numbers?
Oh, yeah, probably because you didn't remove the desktop PHP. Try just directly addressing hello. Oh, is it in the right folder? It has to be in htdocs. Yeah, it has to be in htdocs. You can go through XAMPP, click explore. Yeah, so the file has to be in htdocs in order for the server to find it. If you just like have it hanging out anywhere on your operating system, then yeah. Any other questions?
Because you didn't save it.
Ah, see, that would do it. Now. So far so good. So, returning to our source code, you may notice these are a bit strange. They look a little bit like HTML tags, don't they? Just a smidge, right? But they're kind of weird because they're not complete. You know, it's like everything in here is inside of an HTML tag, but it's not got equal signs. It's not like content equals this, right? So, I told you already that this starts PHP mode. If everything is here inside PHP mode, then let me phrase it differently. If PHP mode starts on line 3, would anybody care to guess what mode we're in on line 2? Correct. Outside of PHP tags, you are in plain old vanilla HTML land. For example, we can insert our HTML boilerplates. We can type H1 babies first PHP. Oh, not new tab. There we go. Babies first PHP. Hello world. There we go. PHP, the purpose of it is to modify HTML documents. It has been designed for this purpose. You can open multiple PHP sessions within the same file. They all share memory, right? What PHP does not share is any memory between packets. So each request, like when you're servicing a request and then you send out the response, it forgets everything it was doing, then it's like, ooh, a new request, and it starts right from scratch. Alright? So, very good. Any questions about that? This class isn't much for the question asking, is it? So, I mean, it's not like there have been no questions. But yes,
You're saying that PHP is used to modify HTML.
yes.
How would we modify the H1 from inside the PHP?
Good question. I can do that for you right now. Watch this. Watch this, my friends. PHP echo to something happened. Probably there are spaces in there that shouldn't be. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, there you go. Or, if you prefer, echo X. So, let me show you what's going on in this example. The question was, how can we modify heading size from PHP? Well, I drop in this PHP interpreter tag, which is echoing whatever the value is in a variable X. And, if I may take just a moment, because this is going to be one of your constant friends and companions this semester. All variables in PHP must start with a $sign. At all times, no exceptions. Yay! So, here, I'm echoing the contents of the variable X right next to an H. So long as that's a valid character, you know, X is somewhere between 1 and 6, and I do it here on the other side as well, let me show you what the HTML response looks like. So, within your inspector pane, we are going to we're going to be exploring a few more of these tabs over the course of this semester, but one of the most important ones for this course will be the Network tab. The Network tab allows you to view the contents of packets, incoming and outgoing packets. So, let's just blow it up a little bit. Here we go. Network. So, you can see, maybe just use that a little bit. When I load the page, hello.php is loaded by this packet. This is the packet. This is the resource request, and it also contains the response. These things are request-response pairs. So, if you click on it, you get some details. Lots of information in the packet. Right now, we are interested in the response. You'll notice, where's my PHP gone? All of the PHP is processed out of the response packet before it is sent. No PHP touches the client. Very, very important principle that I hope everybody comes to understand as quickly as possible. no PHP touches the client. All of it is processed out by the server before the packet is sent. Because it's processed out before the packet is sent, the client never sees any PHP at all whatsoever. And this is a good thing. There's all kinds of sensitive information contained in PHP code. One example, your PHP scripts will need to communicate with database servers. To communicate with database servers, they will need login credentials. You will, at one point in this course, be putting database login credentials into a PHP script. If that PHP script were viewable in the client, then your database credentials would be publicly accessible for anybody who knew how to open the inspector pane, which is obviously something you don't want, right? So, no PHP touches the client. Very important, right? It all gets processed out. It's just a text substitution engine. That's all it is. That's what PHP is. It's text substitution. And you do not just have to do it with HTML. You can use this on JavaScript, by gum. You can have a programming language modifying programs in another programming language. The term for this is meta-programming. So you can do that, but we're not going to. It might be fun, but not here. This is not a place for fun. This is a place for work. Although I suppose we could have some fun. So, excellent question. So you see, like, notice also that the PHP has actually been, like, character literal in its response. Notice, see the spaces right here? Right? If we take a look at our original source code, it has preserved these spaces, right? So, if I wanted to tighten that up, you can just tighten it up. Fortunately, HTML is relatively forgiving for this sort of thing. Reload, packet, and you can see that has tightened it up. Right? So it's literally a character by character, like substituting characters for other characters. That's what PHP does. It takes, whenever it runs an interpreter session, it takes the output of that session and replaces it in place with the script tag, between the script tags. It's like insert results of script here. That's what PHP does. Make sense? Any questions? Yes?
Why does it still show the hello world part when you're using echo after running it?
So, first, this is inside of a PHP tag, so it is script. Second, echo is PHP code, right? What this thing gets replaced with is whatever the output is of that script portion. In this case, it is the string hello world and nothing else. So echo doesn't appear in the HTML file that's been sent out through the response packet because it's not being printed. Like, if you wanted to, you could put it in, right? You could say echo hello world, right? And then it would show up, but I don't know why you would. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I thought it would just hide the hello world as well and just show up on the web browser.
Well, I mean, you know, every time that the PHP interpreter hits one of these tags, it's like, okay, I'm going, it's PHP time. You get to use as many of those in a file as you want. For most examples, though, especially early on in the course, we will be using. There's too many people asleep in this classroom. I put the lights too low. I should have known. For many of the early assignments, we won't be using multiple PHP tags so much. We'll be more like, here's your big block of code that answers the assignment problem. Process it through. As a matter of fact, a lot of the PHP which you'll be writing in this course is intended to be in response to AJAX requests. In which case, you're not even necessarily interested in sending a bunch of HTML. You'll be like, we will at points be sending things like JSON, right? So, yeah.
Are the variables similar to JavaScript variables in the sense that they will know what they are once you initiate them?
I didn't include any typing information, did I? Yeah, so in terms of how things work with declarations and even how data types work, we are in JavaScript land. Yeah, unfortunately, because JavaScript has the worst typing of any language.
I concur.
Good. It's nice that there's a person of intelligence in the classroom. Yes?
Is there any way to do that PHP insertion without
There is an abbreviated form, yes. I always confuse people when I use it in the first lecture, but this is the abbreviation for it. You can take out PHP echo and replace it with an equal sign, and that's a little bit nicer, but in general, that's what you're working with. Yeah. Yes? This is assigning the integer literal value of 3 to the variable x. The variable x is then printed inside of the tag, so you get h3. If I wanted to, I could modify this to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, and from one variable, control how big the headings are. Control which heading is being used. Anywhere this variable is being used. And of course, we are in a first-class programming language, so heaven only knows the program you could write to determine the value of this variable. Make sense? Awesome. Any other questions before we break? Yeah.
Do you use the abbreviation on the front? Do you have to use it as well?
Nope. You mean the equal sign? No, this will work as written.
But at the end, where it's closing.
Nope. Each one is its separate, its own thing. I mean, if you're the type of person to use one, you should use multiple, just because it's nice to keep consistent conventions, right? But it's not required by the compiler. Does that make sense? Any other questions? Yeah.
When you initialize X with PHP, it's within an HTML document. Does it need to be, or does it need to be?
Could you say a little louder, please?
When you initialize X, you had it within our HTML. Does it need to be inside our HTML, or could it just be outside?
Did I? Looks to me like that's inside of a PHP tag.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can't use PHP in HTML mode, and you can't use HTML in PHP mode unless it's inside of an output string. Yeah, they don't play nicely together, like oil and water. Question?
The file has to be a PHP file, right?
Yes. Otherwise, the server is going to bork on it. Yes.
Why are the exams weighted 60% over the assignments for 40%?
Because it's very easy to fluff your way through the assignments without actually learning the content, and that's if you'll notice, there's also a policy that you must pass the proctored component of the course in order to pass the course. Any other questions before we break? Yes?
The exams will be writing by hand or
Yes, all of the exams are pen and paper written tests.
Is the midterm gonna, or sorry, the final gonna be continuation from the midterm?
It will focus quite a bit on the material that's been covered since the midterm. So, in programming classes, the material is strongly cumulative. It's not going to be possible to write the exam without knowing the stuff from the first half, but it's not the intent of the exam to explicitly test it, if that makes sense. Yes?
What do you mean that the server will act up without the PHP involved?
Can you speak up a little bit?
When you said that the server would mess up if there wasn't PHP, what do you mean?
Did I say that? The server will mess up if there's...
It would board.
Yeah, if the file is not it does not have a .php extension, then the server will not interpret it as being a PHP file, which means any PHP code in the file will not be executed as such. That's all. Yeah. The server expects it, like the server tells itself whether I need to fire up the PHP interpreter by looking at the file extension. Yeah. Question?
So basically, we can have HTML in a PHP file, but we can't really like put out some HTML content.
Yeah. All .php means is there is PHP in this, please process. You can actually use PHP in lots of different file formats, including JavaScript and CSS. All right, I think that's about enough for today. Thank you very much for your time and attention, folks, and we will see you tomorrow.
Thank you so much.
Take this out.